Hello and welcome to U218. This is a review for Unbreakable from the year 2000. When Unbreakable came out in the year 2000, it was the next film on for M. Night Shyamalan after his breakout massive hit A Sixth Sense, which wasn't his first film, but it may as well have been because no one really saw the first two. So expectations were high on Unbreakable. Could it be as good as The Sixth Sense? Could it be better now that he's got a bigger budget, people trust him more, and he can do what he wants? There was a tangible sense of disappointment that it was about comic books, as if a story about ghosts in his previous story was somehow more legitimate. But we weren't in the superhero age as we are now, with Marvel releasing a film every 3 or 4 months. Before 2000, the biggest superhero movies by far were Christopher Reeve's Superman and Tim Burton's Batman films. Other than that, there wasn't really that much. People tried, but the audience wasn't quite there yet. In 2000, as well as Unbreakable, the first X-Men film came out, and that really sowed the seed to allow everything else to happen, because that was a massive success. But this was just before that, so they weren't quite accepted yet. They were still a bit too silly for most audiences to think of to go and see. At the time, the movie website Ain't It Cool News was pretty much at the height of its popularity, with Harry Knowles running the show there. Since then he's stepped down because of alleged behaviour that I'm certainly not going to go through here. But one of the things that he picked up on at the time, I remember, was that Unbreakable was planned as a trilogy, and he postulated that what the titles of the other films might be, and I think he said Unbreakable, Breakable, Broken. But because Unbreakable did okay at the box office, but it didn't do spectacularly well, and it was certainly seen as a disappointment in terms of financials in comparison with The Sixth Sense, talk of a trilogy just stopped happening, because it wasn't successful enough anyway to do another film, let alone 2 other films. But now with what we know about Split and Glass, that Unbreakable is the first story in a trilogy, I wanted to go back to it 19 years later and see if it still stands up to scrutiny. Now I own it. It's on Blu-ray. But I haven't watched it for at least 5 years, so although I have seen it maybe 10 times, it's a familiar film to me, but there are details that I will have forgotten in that period of time. The absolute first thing that you can say about Unbreakable is that it's got a very muted colour scheme and it's slow paced. I think the first 4 scenes in the movie total about 14 minutes of action. Now we're very used to a strong action sequence at the beginning of a superhero movie, so there'll be something that illustrates their power, something that illustrates the bad guy. In this, you get a baby being delivered, you get a train crash, but without seeing any of the detail of the train crash itself. There's a lot of shots where you are following the action in reflection of things, in mirrors, in windows, and there's a lot of slow camera movement, that instead of cutting from here to here for 2 people talking together, the camera will slowly move between the 2. I love how low-key the demonstration of David Dunn's power is when he realises who he is and what he can do. At the end of Superman, which was Superman's illustration of power, is that he flies around the world so fast that he reverses time to save his love. In Unbreakable, David Dunn, his illustration of power is that he's got a good grip, and it's a demonstration which no one sees. The superhero can't be vindicated for their behaviour by the general public, because the general public have no idea that he exists. There is a truly iconic shot of cinema in Unbreakable, as in transcending all genres. I think it's one of the iconic shots of movies, which is after having fallen in the pool at the end, and David Dunn has pulled himself out with the help of the 2 kids, and he lifts himself out of the swimming pool to see the 2 kids behind him who have just effectively saved his life. It's a properly iconic shot, but it's been unfortunately largely forgotten. Now, the only thing that I didn't like at the time when Unbreakable was released was the ending, because it seems to just stop. There's text on the screen, which again is consistent with the comic books, but it felt a bit, oh, is that it? Elijah Price, Samuel L. Jackson, is nothing to do with the ending of the film at all. He is to do with the ending, but he's nothing to do with the crescendo of the film, the end of the character arc. And then the credits roll, and it's a downer, not because the story wants it to be a downer, and this is where I think the problem was. It leads you from an audience perspective to a down point. You feel dissatisfied with what's just happened, and then you leave. And quite often the very last thing that you feel about a movie, certainly when you've seen it in the cinema, is kind of the emotion that you take home with you about it as a whole. And for Unbreakable, it's a sense of disappointment. It's a sense that you feel like there should have been another scene there. You feel like something else should have happened there. Now, 19 years later, and with the release of Glass about to happen, the text on the screen, the approach to the film makes sense. But back then, it was a disappointment. But still, overall, Unbreakable is one of the films that I can go back to again and again. I wouldn't call it a favourite, but it's got some really good ideas in it. It's really well told. And with your 2019 superhero sensibility as an audience member, if you can sit down and you can accept that this is going to be a low-key superhero movie, sit down and watch it, because it's a great little film and it's worth watching.